Today, we're continuing with our series, 7 Mistakes High Achievers Make When Choosing Their Next Career Step. You can read the introduction to this series. I've linked it above, and you can also read all about mistake number 1, thinking in terms of jobs and roles instead of thinking in terms of applications of their craft. I've linked that article above as well. Today, we're going to jump into mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 that high achievers make when they're choosing their next career step is thinking in terms of industries and functions instead of thinking in terms of goals, blockers, and problems to be solved. So in the last article, we worked on identifying your craft. And remember, you only need to get to a rough 50 to 60% clarity on what your craft is. Do not spin your wheels trying to get to 90 to 100% clarity. Today, we're going to work on finding high value applications of your craft. This is your next career step we're talking about, not your next hobby step. So whatever you do next, let's make sure that it plays to the strengths of the base material you're working with, and let's make sure it makes as much money as you want it to make, supports the lifestyle you want to live, and it's something that you'd be proud to tell people you do at a cocktail party. We are working towards a win-win. So how do we find the highest value applications of your craft? We do this by thinking in terms of the goals that other people want to achieve, the blockers they run into as they try to achieve that goal, and the problems they have to solve in order to overcome those blockers. Because your craft creates value by solving problems for other people. The more pressing, painful, or high priority the problem is that you solve, the more value you create. And the more value you create, the more value you can capture in the form of a salary, a fee, equity, royalties, whatever that might look like. Now, the categories of industry and function often obscure what's really going on. What's really going on is always goals, blockers, and problems to be solved. Let me give you some examples. Let's take 2 people who are both tech product managers. They might look very similar from an industry and function perspective, but when you ask them about the goals, blockers, and problems to be solved, product manager A might tell you, well, the goal I'm working towards is establishing product market fit with this new product or this new feature. The biggest blocker to me achieving this goal is that I don't really know what the customer wants. So the problem I'm solving is, how do I figure out what the customer truly wants? And I'm using a mix of interviews and surveys and data analysis and A/B testing to try to figure that out. Whereas product manager B might tell you something totally different. They might say, the goal I'm working towards is making customers spend more time on our app. The biggest blocker to achieving that goal is actually getting resources internally to implement the ideas I have. I have lots of ideas. I'm pretty confident that they would work. The challenge is getting them launched when there's 100 other ideas in the company that I have to compete with. So the problem I spend my time solving is, how do I get my ideas in front of the customers? And I'm doing a mix of figuring out how to persuade and build alliances with teams internally to get my initiatives prioritized. And I'm also figuring out how to make my ideas faster, cheaper, simpler to ship so that the burden to get them into customers' hands is lower. Both of these people are in the same industry, working in the same function, but they are working towards very different goals, facing very different blockers to achieving those goals, and they are therefore solving very different problems day to day in order to overcome those blockers and achieve those goals. And you can imagine that the crafts that are best suited to solving those day-to-day problems are very different. I'm going to give you another example. Let's look at a criminal defense attorney and a wedding photographer. Now, I'm not going to pretend these are the exact same job. Obviously, they're not, but they might have more similarities than you realize. If you talk to them, they might both tell you, the goal I'm working towards is getting my clients the outcome that they want, whether that's fantastic photos or a not guilty verdict on the most important day of their lives. The biggest blocker to achieving that goal is actually keeping my clients out of their own way. I know how to get the fantastic photos, or I know how to get the not guilty verdict. That is not the blocker. The blocker is that because this is the most important day of their lives, my clients have a lot of ideas for what they want me to do. And they tell me those ideas very forcefully, and then they can get really mad at me if I don't listen. But also, my clients aren't the experts. And if I just did everything they said, we might not get to the outcomes they want. So the problem I'm solving is, how do I keep my clients calm, reassured, and on track with my game plan, despite how understandably stressed they might be? So I spend a lot of time listening to their concerns, answering their questions about my approach, explaining why it's all going to be okay, why it's all going to work, and just providing emotional support and reassurance when they're stressed. And given that that's one of the big day-to-day problems that they're solving, a criminal defense attorney and a wedding photographer, despite being in totally different industries and functions, might actually be practicing the same craft every day. So how do you start thinking in terms of goals, blockers, and problems to be solved instead of thinking in terms of industries and functions? There's 3 things I want you to do. Step number 1, take your first guess at what you might want to do next. It's okay if it's based on industry or function. It's okay if you're not even that confident that your guess is the right answer. Just pick one thing that you think you might want to do next, because we're going to test that thing with steps 2 and 3. Step number 2, go talk to people who do that thing. And I want you to ask them 3 questions. What are the goals that they're trying to achieve? What are the blockers they're running into as they try to achieve that goal? And what are the problems they have to solve day to day in order to overcome those blockers and achieve that goal? And then step 3, I just want you to see how your automatic brain reacts as it listens to these people talk. Because I'm guessing, as you listen to me say the goal, blocker, problem to be solved breakdown in this article so far, I'm guessing your brain had some instant automatic reactions to what it was hearing. These reactions were not fully reasoned, well-articulated sentences. They were just feelings. It was a sense of, oh, this is interesting, or I don't want to hear about that. It was a sense of like, oh, warmer or colder. And I just want you to notice the reaction that your brain has as it listens to people talk about the goals that they're trying to achieve, the blockers they run into, and the problems they have to solve. Because the things that your brain gets excited about, those things are a good fit for your craft. And the things that your brain gets turned off by or bored by, those things are not a good fit for your craft. As you do steps 2 and 3, what you're really doing is you're gathering external data and internal data. You're gathering external data about what you'd really be doing day to day in different roles, and you're gathering internal data about whether or not that real day-to-day work is a good fit for your craft. And with that data, you will be able to prove or disprove your hypothesis about that particular next step that you are trying to learn more about. Sometimes it can also be pretty helpful to talk through all that data with somebody else. So you can come talk to me and tell me what you're finding. You can drop by anytime for a no strings attached coffee chat. It's not a sales pitch or a sales call, just an opportunity for us to talk about whatever's on your mind, and I'll offer you some one-off coaching and brainstorming about your situation. The link to book a coffee chat is above. Or you can also book a consult call, and we can map out what a full coaching engagement might look like. That way we can work through all the hypotheses you have about what you could do next. We can test them one by one through the lens of your craft being applied to different goals, blockers, and problems to be solved. We can get you really clear on what your next step should be, and we can get you into that next step as efficiently as possible. Link to book a free consult call is above. Or if you're listening on Instagram, both of those links are in my bio.